I, M35, regret leaving my wife, F29, at the airport. My wife got a new job where she started making several times what she was making before. I was incredibly happy for her since this was her first time making six figures. I've been making six figures for several years now and have funded most of our lifestyle. She had a history of putting me down, but as soon as she started making more money, it amplified considerably. She'd criticize everything I would do and nothing I did seemed to be right in her eyes. As an example, we'd go on several trips a year, at least one international and a few domestic, which I've always fully paid for. Although we travel more than most people, she said that she wasn't satisfied because I never flew her first class. Although we stay in Nice hotels, clean and safe 4-plus-star hotels, she said they were never Instagram worthy. She'd often compare our life to influencers and I'd have to remind her that what she sees on social media is not real. We went on a vacation along with her parents and sister. On the last day, we visited a few sites and we began the several-hour trip to the airport. Everyone slept while I drove the family around. We flew back home and as soon as we deplaned, she started yelling at me on the concourse. She said so-and-so's husband is doing X for their wife, and demanded to know why I'm not doing the same for her. She kept yelling at me as we made our way through the terminal. It was all just one big blur. As soon as we got landside, I suggested I get the car from the parking garage while she grabs the checked-in luggage. I see her waiting by the door and I pulled up as far as I could before I got to the handicap loading zone. She was yelling at me to move closer and it didn't matter because it was late at night. Although no one was around, it still doesn't sit with me right to park in a handicap loading zone. She was mad and came up to the car and started yanking on the door handles. She dropped something in the car and went back for the luggage that was about 30 feet away. I was getting out to load the bags into the trunk. She yelled something at me and something in me snapped. I told her I was not going to put up with this anymore and told her to call an Uber home as I drove off. As I was leaving the airport, I had a change of heart and decided to turn around and pick her up. I came back to the terminal and she wasn't there anymore. I checked Find My and it looked like she was moving along with the AirTags in our luggage. So I assumed she must have gotten an Uber home. I come home and see a taxi in front of our home. It turned out she left her purse and phone in the car. While she went to go back for the luggage, she said it was some miracle from God that she found a taxi driver willing to drive her home without her wallet or phone, and that it was a sign for her to leave me. She moved out 2 weeks later and ultimately filed for divorce. I still think about that night. I question myself if things would have been different if I just kept my cool. I've lost my partner, but I'm in a state of peace that I haven't been in a long time. How do I stop reliving that moment? I've since taken several trips through that airport and relived that incident every time. I've taken several flights since the incident and every time I pass by the area where this happened, the bottlenecked exit out of airside, I'm reminded of what happened. Sorry for the confusion. TLDR. I snapped and left my wife at the airport. It was the straw that made her leave and file for divorce. Edit. It's sad that people seem to think this is fake. I'm trying to be as detailed as possible without doxing myself. Why did I put up with it so long? We built a life together. We had our home, our friends, our dog, and it felt like it was time to start a family. When things were bad, they were terrible, but on the good days, they were amazing. We're both South Asian, and divorce has a terrible stigma in our culture. I made a commitment to this person and I planned on sticking with it. I'm not innocent. I have a terrible time communicating when someone is yelling at me. I walk away from the situation rather than fighting, especially in public. This in turn upsets her because she feels like she's not being heard. which makes her even more upset. Edit 2. Although we're culturally the same, American-born South Asians, we had very different upbringings. My parents were first-generation immigrants who came to this country with nothing. Even though I didn't have brand name, designer or anything growing up, I was in a very loving home. We had been going to couples counseling, and through that I learned about her abandonment issues. She grew up in a dysfunctional household. When she was a teenager, her dad moved to another state and was left to fend for herself from her narcissistic mother. Once we got married, her parents began living in the same household again to keep up appearances. But they live in separate bedrooms and go through bouts of not speaking to each other or delivering messages through their kids. I see a lot of parallels between us and her parents. Her mother would put down her father even in front of me. I can only imagine what's being said behind closed doors. This sounds toxic AF. She sounds horrible, insecure and vain. The peace you feel sounds very welcomed, and you will be much happier now. Yikes, is all I can say. Probably not the best move to leave her there. But I honestly don't blame you. I would have snapped ages ago if I was dealing with that on the regular. You were pushed to your limit and finally stood up for yourself. Although not the healthiest of approaches, the message behind it is still standing up to a bully. That's what she's been to you. If she sees zero flaws for her historic behavior and sees this as a sign for divorce, good riddance. You can't change people like that. They will always be in the right in their own mind. Best to start preparing for the aftermath and talk to a lawyer. If she wanted to fly first class, why didn't she pay for it? Seems she was crazy. You should be happy you are free now. And it's perfectly normal to not be able to finish up with this quickly. Some people take years to get over a relationship. Also, there likely was some bigger issues going on. Like a wife does not constantly snap unless there is some other bigger issues. So you can be happy you saved you both some time by speeding the slow ending up this way. Your relationship was over way before that night anyway. The event you described was just the catalyst for an already impending breakup. Let her go. You are better off. She seems like an angry, unhinged person. Count your losses. She sounds like a horrible and exhausting person to be around. She's a bully and was emotionally abusing you for a long time. Get the best lawyer you can, because this is going to be rough. As for getting over it, find a good therapist who can help you process what you went through. Maybe change how you frame that sequence of events in your mind. Start framing it as the moment you chose happiness. The loop you drove around the airport looking for her as a victory lap. Let her go. Do not chase after her. This reminds me of the time I texted my toxic boss, "I'm done," one morning. A year later she called and said she'd been to therapy and would I please come back. She's been mean to you for a long time. You deserve better. You need therapy. The relationship sounds toxic and you probably got so used to the toxicity that you actually miss it. She has no self-awareness and seems to lack empathy. Meanwhile, you reached a breaking point and did a not-so-great thing. Interesting that you feel so bad about it that you are looping on that moment and lamenting it. I wonder if she loses sleep over being emotionally abusive? I hate to say it, but it sounds like she did you a favor. I love happy endings. Counseling because you have PTSD from her. Peace is awesome and you didn't have it before. Cheers to that. You better not let her come back. If this is real, the going back to the airport is pain shopping. I say get a lawyer and get ready for a messy divorce. I think it's a blessing in disguise. You seem to have put up with her for years. I wouldn't have put up with her for a day. Because, guess what? She never loved you nor respected you. She abused you. You're better off without her. I would not put up with that kind of maltreatment. Tell her, good riddance. Quote, but also, seek counseling. Since she is earning the 6 figures, she can now pay for her fancy Instagram life. Kudos. Have a beer and enjoy the peace and quiet shushing face. You are much better off. Also, as a disabled person, your consideration towards not pulling into the handicap loading zone is greatly appreciated.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.